Welcome to Walker of Worlds podcast. My name's Rachel, and this is the podcast where we step behind the veil to take a look at some long lost and little known spooky stories and urban legends. Nestled in the heart of England is a small, unassuming town with a famous past. Nuneaton gained its name from a medieval nunnery which was established in the 12th century when it became a small market town. It later developed into an important industrial town due to ribbon weaving and coal mining. The author George Eliot was born on a farm on the Arbury estate just outside of Nuneaton in 1819 and lived in the town for much of her early life. Her novel, Scenes of Clerical Life, depicts Nuneaton. The local hospital is named after her, and a statue of her also stands in the town centre. Queen's Road is one of the town's main arteries, bringing traffic from the outer suburbs of Stockingford and Camp Hill before feeding them onto the Ring Road. It's part of the B4101/B4012 road, which starts in Woodend, Solihull, before ending on Queen's Road in Nuneaton. Queen's Road is primarily a shopping street with a variety of different businesses sitting on either side of the road. A handful of historic buildings remain on the road, while the vast majority have been replaced by more modern buildings, including a Lidl supermarket and a number of takeaways. The building we're looking at today are at the end of Queen's Road, which is closest to the town centre. Currently housing 2 restaurants and a mini-mart, these buildings were once home to the town's biggest record store. Entertainment Exchange lived within 2 of the units and sold everything from records to movies to memorabilia to everything in between. The shop was well known across the country, with people stopping in whenever they were passing through Nuneaton. Entertainment Exchange wasn't the only entertainment venue or shop on the street. Directly across from it is the Crew, a rock pub favoured by metal-loving locals and passing musicians. Above the Crew is the Queen's Hall, a venue which has played host to thousands of bands over the years. On the surrounding streets, a number of recording studios, theatres and music shops have had their home. Some are just ghosts of their former selves, memories which live on with those who remember them. Some, while they have long since disappeared, once saw rock stars from the nearby Monsters of Rock and later Download Festival stopping in to purchase guitars, drums and other instruments. Some of them continue their journey through Nuneaton to pop into the Crew for a quick drink before either heading to the festival or hopping on their jet and departing the country. But we're not here to talk about the memories of a street, no matter how wild they are. We never are. We're here to talk about what happens in the shadows when the beer stops flowing and the rock stars have gone to wherever they're going next. Entertainment Exchange was located at 60 to 62 Queen's Road in Nuneaton and was owned and operated by Angela and Dawn. They moved from having a market stall selling mixed media to the shop in 1994. Covering 2 floors, Entertainment Exchange was a veritable Aladdin's cave of films, music, games and memorabilia. However, the site appeared to have some unwanted guests walking its floors, particularly in number 62. Like many shops in the area, Entertainment Exchange was primarily staffed by younger people, teenagers and college students who used their days away from their education to earn some money and hand out advice to all who walked through the doors. However, some of those who existed within the building's walls weren't there to work, nor were they there to buy anything. Instead, they gave the second floor of number 62 a very strange feeling, an eerie feeling of dread and foreboding. Number 60 housed the film part of the business, while 62 was home to everything music related. The 2 buildings had 2 separate access doors leading out onto the street. Bay windows were stocked with products and tiled entrances led into the shops themselves. On the Sunday before number 62 was due to open as the music side of the business, Angela locked herself in the shop to make sure that everything was in place and ready to go before the grand opening on Monday morning. She ascended the stairs to the first floor, home to the vinyl collection, and turned on a radio. Other than herself, the shop was empty, and she needed something to fill the silence while she worked. For a while she did just that, sorting records, pricing them and placing them in racks ready for the morning. Stuck into her work, Angela all but forgot where she was. Pricing, carrying, moving. That's what she was doing, totally caught up in her job. From the corner of her eye she saw something. A shadow in a corner beside an old office which they had transformed into a stockroom. Yet the shadow wasn't a shadow at all, but a small dumpy woman dressed all in black with dark hair that was scraped up into a bun at the back of her head. Unable to comprehend what she'd seen, Angela looked away and the woman vanished into thin air. Angela realised that she was sharing her space, her brand new shop in one of the town's many historic buildings, with someone or something that she couldn't explain. Despite the shock, she continued to work. She had no choice. If she didn't work, then the shop couldn't open the following day. She refused to look towards the stockroom and kept the radio turned up as company in the suddenly haunted building. A handful of hours later, Angela heard her partner Dawn knocking on the door downstairs. She turned off the radio and raced down the stairs into the safety of the outside world. Because of the demographic of their staff, Angela knew that she would have to keep her sighting under wraps. Many of the staff were young and possibly impressionable, and she didn't want to cause hysteria or gossip, which could harm the shop's new reputation. Angela even kept her sighting from Dawn, knowing that her partner was more than a little spooked. But the sighting of the ghost wasn't the end of the paranormal activity within Nuneaton's newest music shop, because of course it wasn't. It never is. Angela began to experience other paranormal activity. In the mornings when she was opening up, she began to notice the smells of pipe tobacco and furniture polish. She said that the smells vanished quickly but would reappear around lunchtime. She also started to see shadows from the corner of her eye, what some would call shadow people, yet she could never identify what she was seeing. Through it all, Angela kept her sightings to herself for fear of alarming either Dawn or the staff. Yet 3 months after her first sighting, Dawn carefully broached the subject when she asked Angela if she'd noticed anything odd in the shop. "What do you mean by odd?" Angela asked. "Creepy, ghostly, or unexplained," Dawn replied. Angela could no longer hide what she'd been experiencing within the walls of Entertainment Exchange, but first she needed to know what her partner had been seeing. A few weeks prior to the shop opening, Dawn had been painting the floors of the upstairs area. While she had been there, she'd seen the image of a woman standing where their stockroom now was. The woman resembled the one that Angela had seen a few months earlier, dressed in black and with her hair in a bun. Angela was relieved to hear that someone else had experienced the same things that she had. From that moment on, she and Dawn vowed to tell one another of any strange activity within the shop. They also vowed to keep their sightings from the staff so as not to worry their young charges. Except the staff already knew about the shop's other occupants. Slowly, the staff began to speak with Angela about what was happening within the shop's walls. Many had seen shadowy figures in their peripheral vision. Others had heard sounds, in particular footsteps on the floor above them when no one else was in the building. While the shop was closed, they were hearing sounds coming from the stockroom, including long periods of banging and what sounded like large objects being moved around. With the shop growing in popularity, Angela realised that she needed to employ more staff. She took on Robert, who by all accounts was an atheist and didn't believe in the spirit world or anything even remotely strange. He laughed whenever anyone talked about the strange happenings within the shop and brushed them off as figments of the imagination. But Robert's cockiness didn't last for long. It felt with him feeling someone brush up against him. When he looked to see who it was, he found that he was completely alone and that the spirits which inhabited the shop had decided to test his lack of belief in the supernatural. Following that, the shop's ghosts focused on him, showing themselves in the corner of his eye until one day he came down to the lower floor looking as though he'd seen a literal ghost. Over the course of a conversation, it turned out that he had. At one end of the upper floor, he'd seen a fully formed male apparition who'd looked solid enough until he'd shimmered and disappeared. Robert had retraced his steps across the floor and stepped into where the toilets were in a bid to find the man, only to find, of course, that the man had completely vanished. The spirits, it seemed, also liked to play tricks. Obviously, the shop was fitted with an alarm system and had a setting so that something as simple as a poster falling from the wall wouldn't trigger it. Yet Angela and Dawn received numerous phone calls from police to inform them that the alarm was going off. For Angela and Dawn, this meant a 25-mile drive from their home to the shop in the middle of the night in order to turn the alarm off. In this area, a 25-mile drive can take upwards of an hour depending on whether the roads are rural or not. Every time they arrived and disarmed the alarm, they found that it had been triggered by something upstairs. Every time they could find no reason for the alarm to have been set off. The alarm sounding became such a problem that the police threatened to stop monitoring the shop. Yet the pranks didn't stop there. One evening before she left, Angela tidied a rack of CDs. She knew that she was the person who did it, so when she arrived the next morning and found empty jewel cases spread across the floor, she had no one to blame but whichever the spirits had turned poltergeist. On another occasion, they entered the shop to find that it had become very hot overnight. Fearing a fire, they raced around until they found an old heater that had been plugged in. They admonished the staff for leaving it plugged in and vowed that they would unplug it before they left. Dawn was the one to unplug the heater. only to come back the next morning and find the heater had been plugged back into the socket and turned on. When she went to remove the plug, it disintegrated in her hands. However, it wasn't just this shop that was haunted. Comments and blog posts have collected other hauntings in the street, including the sighting of a similarly clothed male ghost in another building on Queen's Road. The Abbey Theatre on Poolbank Street, just a stone's throw from the shop, was also said to be heavily haunted, with poltergeist activity whenever people tried to close up, and the sighting of a man in Elizabethan costume on stage. Also on Poolbank Street, just a few yards from the theatre, was a store called Kitbag, which also saw its own fair share of strange happenings. In fact, many people believe that entire part of Nuneaton is very active with the paranormal. One of the reasons behind the activity is believed to have been World War II. With its proximity to Coventry, Nuneaton saw a number of bombings. Between August 25, 1940 and July 28, 1942, a total of 173 bombs of various kinds were dropped on this little town. In May 1941, a bomb hit Queen's Road, resulting in 10 deaths. On the same night, a bomb was dropped onto the adjacent Poolbank Street. No deaths were recorded from that particular bomb. World War II wasn't the only tragedy to hit Queen's Road. The Co-op Dance Hall used to stand where Lidl now is. Built in 1939, the hall hosted dances, charity balls and orchestras, among other events. In 1965, 4 people died in a crush on the hall stairs. Despite attempts to hold dances and bingo nights there, the hall never fully recovered, and it was demolished in 2008 to be replaced by Lidl. To this day, 62 Queen's Road remains haunted. Angela had a chance meeting with the new manager of the property, and he said that there were 6 spirits in the building and that they spoke of her. What shocked her was that the manager didn't know her name. She'd never formally introduced herself to him, yet he addressed her by name because the spirits in 62 Queen's Road had told him who she was. There are far too many tales of what happened within Entertainment Exchange to cram into one podcast, so you'll find Angela's blog post in the description. Thank you so much for listening. If you like your books a little on the weird side, please check out our website at www.roswellpublishing.co.uk. And until next time, stay spooky.